One Night with Keanu Reeves by TaurielOakenshield. Keanu Reeves is totally checking you out, Mel. My best friend since the 3rd grade, Kelly Ann Lawson, remarked as she leaned in and whispered as we celebrated a friend's 30th birthday. It was at a New York City bar, a place where we'd always wanted to go whenever we were all at the Big Apple. And this was the best opportunity we all could ever get. As much as I did want to believe Kel, I failed to see why a 50-year-old man who could have any woman he wanted would notice me. Why would he even take the time to notice me? I'm 20 whole years younger than he is, and as far as I can tell, there's nothing that all really special about me, I replied, causing Kelly to shake her head and look at me in the most saddened expression she could handle. Having heard it so many times in the last 22 years that we've been friends, I got done talking to the bartender as Kelly quietly slipped away, something that she'd do all the time. But what I didn't realize is that Keanu had come up in her place. "Sorry," he said with a laugh. "I didn't mean to scare you. I just signaled your companion just now that I wanted to talk to you, and she's actually clever enough to have gotten the hint. Either that or you've put yourself in this situation before." I couldn't help but smile at the humor that was clear in his voice, but I shook my head, saying that there had never been in any other situation than this nature before. That Kelly, her sister Kate, and my sister Lauren were always the preference of the guys, whereas I virtually disappeared into the background. He shook his head, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he extended his left hand as to try to formally introduce himself, and I did the same. Perhaps this is as good as a time as any to introduce myself to you all as well. I'm Melody Christensen, niece by way of my mother's side of the family to a modern movie icon, Susan Sarandon, who took care of me as best as she could when my mom, Julietta, fought cancer, a battle she ultimately lost on the same day as the 70s bombshell, Farrah Fawcett, who I was nearly named after. Keanu and I spent the rest of the night talking and laughing between ourselves in a private corner of the room, finishing at least 2.5 bottles of wine between us, before I had realized what the time was and that I had to get to my own room, though I'd probably be in a better state to join Kelly and Lauren, as well as Kate and the others, some other time. But rather than let the night end there, I made the decision to invite Keanu in, something he quite readily accepted. Letting the alcohol do the talking for us, as soon as he closed the door with the fingers of his left hand, he used the right to pin me up against the wall. His mouth finding mine in an instant, but rather than pushing him away, I simply moaned in response as my fingers went into his hair, jumping and wrapping my legs around his waist as he carried me over to the bed and playfully threw me onto the receptive mattress, smirking as he rid himself of his jacket and shirt, letting me see that framed Matrix-style body in the moonlight. I opened my blue eyes, wondering why he hadn't made a move yet, and I saw him working at near lightning speed to undo the buckle on his belt, pulling the zipper down on his pants and kicking the shoes off at the same time, not caring where everything landed. He stood in front of me, stark naked, and if it hadn't been dark already, I probably would have seen his dark brown eyes turn almost black with purest lust, as he laid himself on top of me, reclaiming my lips as he did, while his hands moved all over my body. "You're so fucking beautiful. I can't see why some guy hasn't snapped you up already." His breathy voice echoed around my alcohol-influenced head as he moved his lips from my ear down toward my neck, finding what he probably surmised as a weak spot for all women, his slender fingers undoing the button on my jeans, pulling the zipper down on my panties, with it well as my shirt soon suffered the same fate, breaking the kiss only long enough to pull it down over my head and toss it onto the floor in a steadily growing pile. "So fucking gorgeous," he whispered as he lowered his mouth to my breast, taking one at a time into his mouth and squeezing and kneading on one as he sucked and pulled on the other with his teeth and tongue. The uneven lower jaw that would sometime soon come to media's attention, thanks to the certain JOHN Wick scenes, only heightens the arousal I was feeling at the point in time. Gasping as his free hand started working on my already hard clit, feeling him kiss a line from the top of my rib cage to both of my hips, then where I wanted him. Most women would probably find a fully grown beard more than a little irritating whenever a man had his head between their legs, but perhaps it was because we were both drunk that I actually liked the way his beard felt as he moved his head up and down, licking the outer parts of me for a few minutes just before lifting me off the bed from the waist down and shoving his tongue inside, causing me to cry out as I grabbed his hair, which only seemed to push him further, gripping my lower body and making me squirm to his amusement. "Keanu, please," I begged, and he seemed to know what I wanted as he let go of me with one hand, sliding those 2 fingers inside me, scissoring them so that I was stretched to the manual limits by his long fingers, almost moaning as his middle finger found my G-spot, and he began rubbing it from that reaction, his mouth working overtime on my clit as his free hand pressed down onto my lower stomach, keeping me pinned to the bed as he worked to push me headlong into what was probably the most intense orgasm I've ever had. The next thing I knew, he was laying beside me and pushing strands of my hair completely out of my face. Fiercely, I grabbed and kissed him, tasting myself on his lips as I took one of my hands and started twisting it around his rock-hard length, causing him to moan, but he'd probably read my mind, because he put himself back on top of my body, sliding it in perfectly, which caused me to gasp as he stretched me out, digging my nails into his shoulders as he started out slow. Then my pleading began to move a little faster. An eternity seemed to pass before we simultaneously reached our 10th peak in the same space of a couple of hours, gently pulling out to spare me more pain than what he thought I might be feeling at that point. He collapsed on his back, but rather than to turn to face the other way, he gently moved me so that I had my head on his shoulders. His heartbeat gradually slowing to a more sustainable beat than one that it had been keeping just a few minutes before the two of us faded into sleep on the ceiling fan on, looking out with him. Thank you guys for joining me for my Keanu Reeves fanfic reading. Comment below if you want to hear more of this. I tried not to break character like 20 times during this whole reading, so pardon me if you hear like the abrupt cuts. But yeah, this was fun to just screw around with. Yeah. See you guys next time. Bye.